אוקיי. שומעים אותי? מקווה שכן. גבירותיי ורבותיי, welcome. אתם שומעים אותי? זה גם חשוב? מעולה. אבל אוקיי, אז תקשיבו. קודם כל להסביר קצת מה אנחנו עושים פה היום בערב. יש פה שני דברים, אני כן אצטרך שקט מהקהל, כי זה מאוד קשה להתרכז אם לא. מה שאנחנו עושים פה זה פחות או יותר 3 דברים. 1, יש חלק מכם שהם נכנסים לפורמט, רוצים ללכת לתחרויות של הפורמט, או פשוט רוצים להבין לאן הפורמט הזה הולך גם בארץ וגם באופן כללי. וזו המטרה הראשונה של היום בערב. אנחנו הולכים לחסות את הדברים האלה, אוקיי? בנוסף, אנחנו גם הולכים לשחק קצת, נעשה טסטינג, אבל באמת מה שבאנו לעשות פה זה קצת ליישר קווים לאנשים שמתעניינים בלהבין מה קורה בפורמט הזה בכלל. אוקיי, אז קודם כל, בואו נדבר קצת על החלקים של המצגת, שאיך אנחנו נעבור עליהם ואיפה זה קשור אלינו. השקף הראשון זה לכל האנשים שמצטרפים אלינו מקומנדר ומפורמטים אחרים שהם לא 60 card constructed ואוהבים להיכנס לברואים לפני להבין מה זה בכלל מטאגיים ולמה צריך להתייחס אליו, אוקיי? הסלייד השני זה בתכלס אולי אחד מהסליידים הכי חשובים שבו אני הולך לדבר קצת על מאיפה בכלל מגיע המטאגיים של הפורמט הזה, כי הוא קצת מוזר יחסית לפורמטים אחרים, ואנשים תמיד שואלים אותי, איפה אני מוצא דקים, ואיך אני יודע מה מנצח, ואיך אני יודע מה טוב, וכל זה, אני אסביר לכם. יש הסברים, אבל צריך לחפור על תוכן. אוקיי, ואז אנחנו ניכנס לחלק, איפה שנתחיל לפרק קצת את המקרו-ארכטייפס של הפורמט הזה. יש, כמו בכל פורמט, מקרו-ארכטייפס ספציפיים, אבל הארכטייפס בתוך המקרו-ארכטייפס, יש להם הרבה ניואנסים משלהם. אוקיי? ובסופו של עניין אנחנו נדבר על, ניקח את כל זה ביחד, ואיך בוחרים דק לתחרות, אוקיי? אז יאללה, בואו נתחיל מההתחלה קצת. לפני הרבה שנים, כשרוי היה שחקן מג'יק צעיר, והוא עוד לא ידע מה לעזאזל הוא עושה, הוא ניסה לבנות כל מיני דקים מגניבים לסטנדרט, כי ברואינג זה כיף ומגניב. ואז תמיד היו מכסחים לו את הסבתא, והוא חשב שהוא שחקן גרוע. עכשיו זה באמת נכון שהוא היה שחקן גרוע בזמנו, אבל זה לא רלוונטי לסיפור שלנו. אחד מהדברים שלמדתי להעריך זה מה זה מטאגיים, אוקיי? ומה ההבדל בין לעשות הומברו ולקחת נטדקס. בגדול, זה לא שהומברו זה דבר רע, ההפך, זה דבר טוב, זה דבר טבעי, וכל דק שאי פעם נהיה מיינסטרים דק, התחיל מזה שמישהו עשה לזה ברו, אוקיי? וזה ממש נורא כיף, זה גם משהו טבעי בתהליך הלמידה של שחקן, בכנות. אבל צריך להבין שמטאגיים נוצר כתוצאה מ100 ואלפי הרצות של דקים, ובודקים את הקונסיסטנטיות שלהם. על כן, net decks are consistent of well-honed decks that have been worked upon by thousands of people, and they end up as smooth, refined, and consistent products. Okay? Sorry. Now, before we start talking about the entire Pauper metagame, let's manage y'all's expectations a little bit. כן. לכל השחקנים שמגיעים מסטנדרט, המטאגיים פה הוא יותר מגוון. זה בסדר, זה אמור להיות ככה. לכל השחקנים שמגיעים ממודרן, בכנות, ככל שהזמן עובר, אנחנו מתקרבים לשם יותר ויותר. בעבר מודרן היה יותר מגוון מפופר. היום זה באמת מתחיל להתגבש לא רחוק אחד מהשני, שזה קצת מפתיע. אנחנו נדבר על זה עוד שנייה. כן. אז מה שרציתי להסביר פה זה, אנחנו לא יכולים לדבר על כל המטאגיים של פופר, זה ממש ממש רחב, אוקיי? שימו לב שזה day one של פופר גדון, והדק שקיבל הכי הרבה אחוז, מונורד מדנס, עדיין מגרד קצת מעל ה-10%. And that's it. זהו. ואחר כך אתם רואים Affinity 10%, וזה דרך אגב, זה רק Day 1, לא הגענו ל-Day 2 Conversion, נדבר על זה אחר כך, וזהו, ואז כבר נפלנו מתחת ל-10%. אתם רואים פה למטה, מה שחשוב להבין פה, זה שתראו, פה נמצא Other Decks, מה שאומר שכל זה, עד שהגענו ל-Other Decks, 60% מהמטה, זה 9 דקים שונים, כולל Other, אוקיי? וזה רק 60% מטה, אז יש לך עוד 40%, כן? כפי שאתם רואים. כן, אז אנחנו לא יכולים לדבר על הכל. יתרה מזאת, אני גם לא מומחה בכל הדקים האלה, אוקיי? אני משחק את הפורמט הזה כבר עשור, ואני עדיין לא מומחה בכל הדקים. חלק מהם אפילו חדשים, אז אין איך להיות מומחה בהם. אלא אם כן המצאת את הדק. אוקיי, עכשיו נגיע לחלק המאוד מוזר ומאוד ייחודי של פופר, שזה מאיפה מגיע המטאגיים של פופר. כי הוא מגיע משלושה מקומות מאוד מאוד מוגדרים, כל אחד שונה, כל אחד מההשלכות שלו. ואנחנו בכנות נתמקד קצת פה, אבל חשוב להבין שגם זה ניזון מזה ומזה. כן. נכון. נכון. קיצר, אז אנחנו נתמקד בטורנירים בנייר גדולים. חשוב להבין שיש 3 מקומות שמהם המטאגיים של טורנירים כאלה ניזון. אחד זה MTGO מטאגיים, והשני זה המטאגיים מהקהילות המקומיות שבהם אנחנו משחקים, כמו שאנחנו משחקים בימי שלישי ורביעי, אוקיי? אנחנו כרגע לא תומכים הרבה לזה, אבל אל תדאגו, בעתיד נתמוך. אוקיי. לא, רגע. לפני שהשחקני מונורד מתלהבים. אוקיי. by far, המקום שהכי הרבה מייצר מידע ומידע נקי וקל לנתח, זה MTGO. למה זה בורח לי כל הזמן? MTGO זה מה שמייצר את רוב המידע של פופר, אוקיי? פופר משוחק היסטורית בעיקר ב-MTGO, ורק בעשור האחרון הוא באמת הפך להיות פורמט יותר בנייר. אז על כן אנחנו נמצאים פה למטרה הזאת. במהלך המצגת הזאת אנחנו נדבר ספציפית בשקף הזה על הדאטאבייסס ומאיפה הם מגיעים. חבר'ה, אם עוד לא הבנתם את זה, חננות משחקים את המשחק הזה. הם אוהבים סטטיסטיקה, הם אוהבים מלא סטטיסטיקה. אני מראה לכם עכשיו את האתר של Nerd to the Core. הבחור הזה קוראים לו אלכס אולמן, הוא אחד משלנו. אוקיי? הוא אחד משלנו. עכשיו, צחוק, הוא לא רק אחד משלנו, הוא גם אחד מהשחקנים שנמצא ב-PFP, The Pauper Format Panel. הוא אחד מה9 שחקנים שמחליטים מתי עושים בנים, מה עושים לו בנים, כל השטויות האלה. למה הוא מחליט את זה? כי משעמם לו בחיים, הוא ועוד 8 אנשים, והוא נורא אוהב להוציא סטטיסטיקה. אתם תראו, מה שיש פה זה העמוד... תפתח לו. Nerd to the core. מה שקורה פה זה, הבחור הזה, זה העמוד פטריון שלו. כל שבוע, כל סיזן, הוא מוציא מאמר שנראה כזה, אוקיי? סיזן ריקאפ, לגמרי, אוקיי? כשיהיה לכם ברור, תראו מה שקורה פה, אחר כך, כן. אז כדי שתבינו, יש פה, הוא מוציא פה power rankings, הוא מוציא פה תיאור של דקליסטים, הוא מוציא פה הסבר למה הדקליסט הזה עלה, ירד, מה שזה לא יהיה. זה קורה ליטרלי כל פאקינג עונה, אבל גם הרבה פעמים כל סוף שבוע הוא מעלה מה קרה בסוף שבוע הזה בעולם של פופר, כי יש את ה-challenges. כן, זה dedication. There's a reason this guy sits on the Pauper Format Panel. He's bored and he likes statistics. רגע, I'm going to ask you to hold the questions until the end, so that doesn't break my groove. Hashtag the groove. בדיוק. כן. קיצר, אתם רואים, number 1, Madness Burn. זה גם מביא אותנו לנקודה מאוד מאוד טובה. מה שניסיתי להסביר לכם זה שהמטאגיימים נראים שונים בין MTGO, Large Paper Tournaments and Small Local Tournaments. אחד מהדברים שהוא עושה בעיקר, זה הוא מנתח את ה-MTGO data, כי כמו שאמרתי אל, yes, that data is easily extrapolatable. Now, one of the things that you need to understand is that the online metagame has over-representation of certain archetypes and under-representation of certain archetypes. It has over-representation of whatever the hell the best burn deck is at any given moment. And the reason for that is very simple. MTGO is filled with grinders. They are double and triple queuing sometimes. They don't care about how many games they win. They care about how many games they win per hour. So they don't care if they've lost if they've lost 3 games, if in the span of 1 hour they won 7, versus if they were playing a quote-unquote better deck, but that deck only got them 1 or 2 victories per hour and 0 losses. Okay? Because that's the way the MTGO economy works, essentially. So decks that can win quickly and require very little decision-making points, decks that are low heuristic levels, are overrepresented in MTGO. Additionally, and this is the flip side of that, decks that require lots of heuristics and specifically click-intensive decks that go infinite and are massively underrepresented by MTGO, because your enemy in MTGO is the clock. It's all about the clock. So this means that a lot of extremely powerful combo decks, blue-white familiars, Jeskai Ephemerate, all sorts of Altertrons, Pizza Combo, a lot of the combo decks, a lot of these decks will be underrepresented or downright non-existent in MTGO because nobody wants to deal with the clock aspects. Whereas in paper, you can say, I have demonstrated an infinite loop, I win, ? And the game's over. Okay? No, Pauper doesn't exist properly in Arena. Okay. So, this brings us to the divergence between MTGO and large paper tournaments. Large paper tournaments, historically primarily represented by Paupergeddon, but today represented by more than that, we'll talk about that later, have an overrepresentation of these high-skill, theoretically click-intensive decks that if you're a good player, you've played this deck a lot, you can play it really quickly, you can get to your loop really quickly, and demonstrate a win really quickly. That's why a lot of times these decks tend to come out of nowhere in Paupergeddon and show up and be successful, because a lot of people that are preparing for Paupergeddon are grinding and preparing for it on MTGO, and so they're underprepared for these other decks. Okay? This, in addition to the fact that I hate MTGO, is one of the reasons why I insist on playing primarily in paper. Okay? Excellent. And that brings us to the data set for Paupergeddon and large paper tournaments. As I've explained before, this game is populated primarily by nerds. They really, really like gathering statistics. And as the years have gone by, well, they've gotten more robust about this. My first Paupergeddon, when I was but a wee lad, right before the COVIDs, when I was a young wart pauper, in February of 2020, right before the COVID bell rung, I played my first Paupergeddon tournament. It was awesome. It was the biggest Paupergeddon tournament that had ever happened in its history. We were a grand total of 275 players. We played 7 rounds, and then there was a cut to top 8. I went 4-3 and then got scrubbed. I was playing Mono Blue Delver at the time. So it was before Talair and Terror even existed. It's good times. Anyways, the Paupergeddon back then was a 275-person tournament. It was 90 to 95% Italians and 5% people from around Europe and things like that. Crazy people like me. That was then. This is now. Paupergeddon now has its own freaking website. They are incredibly well organized. They have an entire page literally called Download Statistics. And that page is insane. You have merged matchup analysis, main event, side events, top 64 deck lists, rebound side events, blah, blah, just so that you understand the depth of statistics that exist behind Paupergeddon. I'm going to show you in just a second. And unlike back then where it was cute, it's 275 people. That's a lot of games. That's nice. That's a statistically significant data point compared to the ocean of MTGO data. Today, it's a different story. Today, Paupergeddon has, for the last 2 years, been 1,000 players every single event, and that's 3 times a year. So that's 3,000 players worth of metagame per year. That starts to become much more than just a cute statistical significant data point compared to MTGO. It starts to become a very big data point. And this top 64 deck lists. Oh, yaffe. This is what I wanted you guys to look at. Because this is what they do with that data literally 48 hours after the tournament. This is the day one meta share. And you can see all of the meta share, all of the decks. Then, I got. You have day two meta share. They have conversion rate tables. Day 1 to day 2, change percentage, counts, conversion rates, etc., etc. They have... Oh, right. It gets even stupider than that. Match win rate matrix. Yeah. Match win rate matrix. Yeah, exactly. The amount of data, match draw rate matrix. Archetype summaries, how many wins, how many losses, the amount of statistical analysis and depth that goes into the Paupergeddon statistics these days is fucking nuts. Okay? There isn't one. There's a whole army of people behind us these days, and that's kind of the point. Where the format was 6 years ago when I went to my first Paupergeddon versus where it is now is completely bonkers. Quietly, and nobody's really, some people are talking about this, but quietly, Pauper is actually becoming one of the most played in-paper competitive forms of Magic. And one of the simple ways that you can look at this is, for those of you who were with me at MagicCon Amsterdam 2 years ago, that was 2 years ago, right? Yeah. Look at the number of Pauper ticketed scheduled events that there were then, and look at the number that there are now. Back then, there was one big event, and then there was 1 or 2 Winnaboxes. Now there's 6. There's 3 Winnaboxes, one every night. There's 2 large events. One of them, the Pauper Cup. The other one, win an entry to Paupergeddon. Both of these are 6 to 7 round events. That's pretty fucking hardcore. Yeah. Also, we'll talk about that later. I'm holding questions until the end. The last thing that I want to talk about is the metagame generated by the local communities. Now, historically, 6 years ago, when I was a young wild nerd, thank you, in order to find local community, or for anyone who's ever watched any Saffron Olive, so in a small local Japanese tournament, basically, so infamous. So first of all, that also applies to Pauper, although the Japanese databases are harder to mine because of the Japanese. But on the other hand, what was available back then and is still available today and is more intense is this, which is, okay. The MTG Italian Pauper Facebook page, which, at first sounds like a ridiculous place to start gathering data until you realize that these people are crazy and insanely well organized. There starts to be a lot more of, content creators with their own takes and all that. But really what you're going to see a lot of is this. Because if there's one thing that you can say about the Italians is that, here you go, Lega Pauper Pisa, the Pisa Pauper League, and this is from their this is the top 4 decks from their 6th big tournament on the road to Paupergeddon, blah, blah, blah. These are people who have very well-organized leagues all over Italy. There is, this is from the Pisa one. I'm going to scroll down in a few seconds. You're going to see one from Bologna or something else. Incidentally. Jund Wildfire. Naya Cazzate, which is Naya Gates. Walls, Spy Combo, and more Jund. Blah, 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 blah. And here we scroll down, and you're going to see another one in a few seconds. There we go. Yeah, that's what I asked myself. It's an extremely unusual thing. It's specifically Italian nerds. Yeah. That's basically it. So here, same story. The top 4 for this is the same thing. That was the second stage of the Pisa League. This is the second stage of the Nettuno League. And these guys are apparently into Mono Red Madness, Monster Tron, Black Green Pestilence, and Mono Blue Terror. Way to go. My point is, these types of posts show up every single week. This is local league data. These are small-ish tournaments. They range in size between 16 and 32. And this is kind of where we are going, by the way. This is our community project, not for this year, but for next year. We will. In fact, on Sunday, you'll notice there will be an announcement from Freak for all the people who want to go to the store championship that we're going to do online deck submission. That's to start training y'all to get used to doing this. Okay? Because this is where we're going to start moving in that direction. So, the bottom line is that local community data is obviously not a huge part of the big tournament data until it is. Because what we went back to, the whole brewing versus net decking, this is where it happens, okay? This is where Talmaldix comes with his weird-ass combo decks, or Yakov Merkin comes with his Auroch tribal deck or whatever, and then somehow it seems to go well, and he goes 2-1, and then he refines it, and then the next week he goes 3-0, and then he stomps people again, and all of a sudden it starts showing up on Facebook, and all of a sudden it starts feeding into this. And that's kind of the point. Is that Talmaldix? Because that'd be fucking hilarious. Excellent. Speak of the devil, and he shall manifest. So, anyways. So, yeah, this is the whole idea. Large tournaments are fed by the MTGO data and by the small local tournaments. Again, back in 2020, when I went to my first Paupergeddon, 275 people, 95% Italians. Today, these are affairs of 1,000 people, and the representation is much closer to like 70-30. 70% are Italians, and 30% are people from other places. Which leads me to the point that the local communities, and them generating metagame is becoming a bigger and bigger factor. In the past, if you wanted to find this data, you had to dig in to an Italian Facebook page. Today, more and more, you see it in places like... Oops, no, not what I wanted to do. No. Go back. No. More and more... Follow this guy. More and more, you see it in the Pauper MTG Facebook page. Now, this is a Facebook page that I have been following for the last year or so. If you go back a year ago, this page was useless. It generated very little interesting data, a few cute stories here and there, but it didn't generate much, okay? What's that? Like most Facebook pages. That's right. However, one of the things that happened over the course of the last 6 years is with the growth of the Pauper circuit, the Italians discovered miraculously that they were organized about something, and so what used to be the LPI, the Lega Pauper Italia, became somewhere in 2023, I want to say, the LPI, Lega Pauper International. And all of a sudden, you had all of these other leagues that started showing up, like these guys. Here's how we, Pauper in the Philippines, good luck to all that 96 participants. 32 teams. That's a massive number of trios. Okay. All of a sudden, where are they? There you go. Where's the Bristol guys? Oh, here we go. London Pauper Showdown. 104 players. Okay. And here you go with first place. Basically. The bottom line, my personal favorite, by the way, let's see if I can find one from them. If not, I'll show you later. There was the Badger. The London Pauper League has a Badger icon. We'll talk about our mascot later. Okay? I know everybody's excited. About our new mascot. We're not talking about it yet. But there is another league over here. We'll find it later, but the bottom line is, that these local leagues have started generating data that now they're updating into Pauper MTG Facebook page like the Italian ones. You see that basically slowly this is starting to have relevant data. You don't have to go digging in the Italian websites for the local metagame. You start seeing cool brews popping up here that actually are part of competitive metagames. The IPT, which is the International Paupergeddon Tournament Circuit, you start seeing places in Hungary, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in the UK. You start seeing all these medium to large scale Pauper tournaments between 64 to 128 players that start generating more of the local community metagame. And that starts feeding into the large tournament metagame. And that's kind of why I wanted to slow down and stop here. By the way, all of the pages that I've shown you, the Alex Ullman stuff, the Paupergeddon statistics, the Facebook pages, all of that is at the end of this presentation. You have links for all of that if you want to dig further into the statistics yourself. References are because as you remember, the credible Hulk always cites his sources. Okay, which brings us to the part where we start with meta overview. The metagame overview. We're starting with where everyone should start. Lightning bolt straight to the face. For better or worse, if you want to brew in this format or if you want to do anything in this format, you have to be aware of the clock. These are the decks that ask the question, are you going to bother me or do I get to kill you by turn, on average, 4.5? Okay? This can be a slow format, but left undisturbed, the aggressive decks are designed to kill you somewhere between turn 4 and 5, left undisturbed. If you do not plan to win by that point, you better have a plan to survive past that point. Now, we're starting to talk about the aggro decks, about 3 main archetypes, Mono Red Madness, Mono Red Rally, and Rakdos Madness. Mono Red Madness is the de facto red deck of the format. It is, as you saw, currently the most represented one on the MTGO data. It was also the most represented in day 1 of Paupergeddon, and then day 2 came by and got its ass kicked. It uses discard outlets. I'm not going to read this, but you guys see more or less how this works. Mono Red Madness, there's always been a mono red deck in Pauper. The weird thing about Pauper in the last 2 to 3 years is that there's actually been multiple mono red decks. They have different strategies. This is a Spellslinger deck. It works off of pingers like Kessig Flamebreather and... what's the goblin? Gutter Snipe, yeah. And good old-fashioned Gutter Snipe. It works a little bit differently than what historic Burn used to work, because this kind of sometimes feels more like a combo deck where it's like, okay, I'm setting up a little bit, I'm pinging in for a bit of damage, and then all of a sudden I unload 14 damage in one turn thanks to a Gutter Snipe, okay? And a Sneaky Snacker. Now, having said that, one of the things that this deck does fold to is if you interrupt and break down the things when they want to, because Gutter Snipe is 3 mana. It's a 3 mana spell that you need to resolve, and then sometimes you still need to untap afterwards. If you counter that, or you kill it, or if you do something like a Weather the Storm on the turn that they themselves are storming off, the deck is vulnerable, okay? It's not unbeatable, which is why its conversion rate to day 2 is as abysmal as it is, despite its massive overrepresentation. The other side, Beep Red, Mono Red Rally. Mono Red Rally is what inherited the mantle of the best bushwhacker deck. Hashtag whack that bush. No, they are still there. Yeah. The deck is much more of a go-wide strategy. It's called Mono Red Rally because it plays the card Rally of the Hornburg. For those that don't know, Rally of the Hornburg creates 2 1/1 human creature tokens, and critically, it gives all humans haste. Now, you'd think, oh, okay, so it gives the tokens haste, which it does. But here's the thing. A lot of times what you end up doing is you play Burning Tree Emissary into Rally the Hornburg, and then you realize Burning Tree Emissary is a human. Even better is when you go Burning Tree Emissary into Burning Tree Emissary into Burning Tree Emissary into Rally the Hornburg, and then bolt. So this is a much more straightforward deck. It requires lower decision-making. It's a little bit more straightforward. It is also more vulnerable to sweepers, quite frankly. But it exerts pressure in the exact same amount as this deck. Left undisturbed, this will run you over, as some people in this room can attest. Finally, Rakdos Madness, the progenitor of Mono Red Madness. People are playing Rakdos Madness because they really love what black brings into the equation, which is namely, black is back, but also it brings 2/2 flying haste in the form of kitchen imps, and it also brings alms to the veins, and potentially, if you choose to go down that route, a whole bunch of blood tokens which generate this undertow of artifact synergies, and then all of a sudden your Galv Blasts are live. Good times. Rakdos Madness is by far the slower of these. If these almost consistently kill you on turn 4 or 5, this one usually takes until turn 5 or 6. And as such, Rakdos Madness is probably the least represented in the format because it doesn't have a great matchup against most of the rest of the meta, because it's just a little bit slower. Having said that, it's very good against Mono Red because it has built-in life gain. And that's sometimes how it manages to get to the top. I fucking love this deck. It is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to play, also because you keep on drawing cards. You should expect to see this. Okay. Other aggressive strategies. Say hello to our little friend. If you do not respect our little friend will come and stomp you. And it doesn't matter if this is piloted by what's his name again, Nadav Civilin the day before yesterday. It doesn't matter if it's piloted by Nimrod Sion, who's piloted a lot. It doesn't matter if it's piloted by Reed Duke, who sometimes decides to show up at modern tournaments and say, you know what people forgot as an archetype? Boggles. And he just fucking runs them over because he's Reed Duke and he can. True story, by the way. So, there you go. Loving an elevator, living it up when it's going down. So, yeah. Boggles is something that will always demand some sideboard slots. And if you do not dedicate some sideboard slots to it, you should be ready to lose to it at some point. It has been and always probably will be some part of the Pauper metagame, so much so that it has also spawned not exactly a clone, but a similar deck with a very similar strategy, which is Mono White Heroic. Heroic trades basically the explosiveness of Boggles for a much more consistent mana base and an easier to protect creature base, essentially. Now, on the other side, if both of these are your go tall decks, Mono White Weenie is an incredibly important part of the aggro puzzle of this format. Mono White Weenie is an aggro deck that has an incredible ability to pivot mid-game should it need to become this grindy mid-range deck, thanks to dumping things into the graveyard and getting value out of them, and setting up turns with one-sided wraths with prismatic strands or alpha striking for 15 to 20 damage with Guardian's Pledge or Rally the Peasants or something along those lines. Recently got stronger thanks to Leonardo. Yeah. Yep. Big brother. Hashtag Achuya. Yes. And I assure you, if you ever go to a tournament that includes more than 64 people, there will always be at least some people playing slivers. Okay? Because it doesn't matter what you may or may not think of them. If you are removal light, slivers will quickly catch up, get bigger than lightning bolts or galv blasts, and you will die. So it is somebody's job to remind you that removal check is an issue. And I assure you, much like other aggressive strategies, an unchecked sliver deck by turn 4 will kill you. Okay? It's not complicated math. On turn 1, they play some stupid sliver. On turn 2, they'll play the Lord. On turn 3, they'll probably lead the Stampede. And then on turn 4, they will play 2 more Lords, and you'll be dead. Okay? It's a thing. What a waste of a turn 3. Totally. Finally, moving away from the aggressive strategies into what preys on the aggressive strategies, the mid-range decks. Hashtag welcome to the grind. Okay? The apex predators of the mid-range form of the mid-range archetypes are basically these 3 types of decks. The Jund decks, hashtag nothing beats good old rock. Affinity decks in their various flavors, and what I'm going to choose to call for this evening, Glintfisher decks, which are decks that usually involve the combination of Glinthawk and Core Skyfisher. The one thing that all of these decks have in common is this fucker. The terror that Modern Horizons 3 brought upon everybody, a 2/1 rat zombie artifact. the tiniest scourge of the format. Look at him, he's just adorable. How can you say no to him? He is my son. Exactly. Now, Jund is, in many ways, it's a beautiful deck. It inherits a lot from its modern predecessor. In many ways, it's actually almost similar to some Jeskai control decks in other formats, in the sense that it plays very few threats, but those threats are very efficient. They can usually be recurred with Blood Fountains or Pulsa Marasa or whatever, and they are all either 2-for-1s or they are problems. Okay? This deck usually will play some of the best card draw in the format, the black card draw suite, which will require you to sacrifice an artifact, and it usually have plenty of fodder, and they will play some sort of removal suite. One of the things that differentiates Jund as a mid-range deck versus a control deck is that the removal that they run is limited. They don't run a huge ocean of removal. They will run sufficient removal to get rid of the few things that are going to kill them and eventually crack back for a lot of damage. The same thing and there's a lot of variants of this. There's a wildfire variant where you have an artifacts lands package, you ramp, you card draw. It's great. Play huge creatures, hydras, whatever you want. There's also a snow version of this. They'll forsake the wildfire. They'll play snow lands instead because they want the efficiency of Skred versus cast downs as their removal suite. Affinity. Affinity is a deck which has existed and likely will exist until they ban the artifact lands in the format. And there are a variety of shapes, sizes, flavors of Affinity over the course of time. Grixis is probably the most common one, but Dimir and Esper are very, very common variants with good reason. The one thing that all of these have in common, and even then, amongst themselves, not all Grixis decks are the same. Hashtag not all Grixis decks. If there's one thing that Affinity players can agree on, and there's literally only two things they can agree on, is a full playset of these fuckers and a full playset of Mirror Enforcers. The end. Everything else in those decks is fundamentally modular. Okay? That wasn't meant to be a joke, but yeah. What's that? No, they won't agree on the lands because sometimes they're different colors. Sometimes you want more indestructible, less indestructible. You want that one-off basic land in case you have a wildfire player. Okay? Do that. Do that or you'll get screwed by a Jeskai Ephemerate just the way I did. Learn from Papa Roy's mistakes. So, like I said, their key threats are these two guys, and the whole idea is that the deck operates on a minimal amount of mana by playing threats that cost almost nothing. Finally, Glintfisher decks. I fucking love these decks. Usually they are in either Boros or Orzhov color. Do not try to run these in 3 colors. It has been done in the past. I don't think we're there anymore in the metagame. If you want to, knock yourself out. Jeskai Skyfisher is a thing. Mardu Skyfisher has been a thing. I don't think it's a good idea. It's very tempting. It's so tempting. Like I said, the one consistent thing about this fucker. Glintfisher decks will usually rely on the combination of playing a whole host of artifacts or things that they will bounce back to their hands for value, ranging from Skyfishers to Thraben Inspectors, Tithing Blades, Grim Baubles, Lembas, Synthesizer, Lembas, whatever you want. They will play a whole host of these to go together with their core Skyfishers and Glint Hawks, sprinkled with some removal to get through and close out the game. These are the macro archetypes of the Apex Predators in the mid-range suite. Moving on, but they are by no means the end of the mid-range suite. There are more decks that could be categorized as mid-range. We're not going to go into them right now. We're going to move into tempo decks. Tempo decks are weird because the definition, yes? Yafé. It's a very valid question. Mid-range decks are designed to grind. They want a slow game where they eventually will grind out of and outvalue the other deck. Tempo decks are not designed to grind. They do not want to go to the ultra late game. They are not designed to win in the early game, but they don't want to go to the late game. They want to win somewhere in the middle. This is why mid-range and tempo are frequently confused. Your confusion is totally legit. But the key strategy of tempo decks is that they will play a few big threats and then play a Protect the Queen game where they counterspell whatever removal comes their way while they start bearing down with really big threats that will close out the game quickly. Okay? The prime archetype behind this are the Tolarian Terror variants. There have been many of these. Usually they are some form of Dimir, Monoblue, or Izzet. Monoblue used to be the most popular. Dimir is having its field day. Izzet's going to make a comeback any day soon, trust me. No, I'm not joking. It really is. Their plan is pretty straightforward. While you try to do stuff, I will either counterspell it or kill it. When you don't try and do stuff, I'm going to fill up my graveyard with Mental Notes and Thought Scours, and then eventually I'm going to dump a bunch of 5/5s for 1 mana and still hold up Counterspell to prevent you from disrupting that. and you'll be dead in 4 turns, if not 3. Tolarian Terror. Similar philosophy, but from a different angle. Fairies. Hashtag the fuckers. Fairies has been an archetype in Pauper for as long as you can remember. And you can ask me, well, how does this exert pressure? They're a bunch of fucking 1/1s. Well, the truth is that they start out as 1/1/1, but very quickly they become a whole bunch of 1/1s. They become even more annoying when those 1/1s become 2/2s, because they become ninjas, and they've drawn you cards, which allows you to find counterspells or removal to keep things going out of the way. Again, these decks don't want to go into the late game, but they want to apply some amount of pressure and then keep you off balance by counterspelling removal so that they get in there and close the game before you have time to stabilize. Tempo. Finally, and this is somewhere in the middle, Cawgates is arguably a deck that sits somewhere between tempo and control. Cawgates is an evolution of the Cawblade idea. You have Squadron Hawks and stupid recurable threats like Cat, Sacred Cat, and other dumb creatures that... what's the medic? I don't remember. There's a 1/3 medic. Outlaw medic. It has lifelink. If it dies, you draw a card. So basically, you don't really want to kill any of these creatures because it feels like a waste. You kill a cat, it's just going to come back. You kill a medic, they draw a card. You kill a Squadron Hawk, doesn't matter. They already have 3 more of those in their hand anyways. Killing their creatures feels like a waste, but you have to kill them. Because if you don't, they're going to use Basilisk Gate and turn those into 4/4s and 5/5s and 7/7s, and then you die with lifelink. And that's how they stabilize. And the lifelink is kind of a big part of what makes this a tempo deck. This is a slow deck. It plays a lot of tap lands, and it's going to give ground early on while it sets itself up. Eventually, it will sort of come back from where it was thanks to the lifelink creatures and its slew of slow card advantage. Okay? It isn't quite an inevitable deck like some of the hard control decks, but it has a lot of shared DNA with them. Okay? Those are the key tempo decks in the format. Oops. Which brings us to the control variants. Hashtag I am inevitable. Control decks can be split into 2 macro categories. The ones without counterspells and the ones with counterspells. The good guys and the bad guys, if you will. What's that? I'm sure I got it right the first time. Golgari Gardens. I'm sure you do. Golgari Gardens and its cousin Golgari Pestilence, aka cat food, are decks. Are decks that basically play a minimal amount of green. Mostly so they have plant tokens, so they can chump block and sacrifice them for card draw spells. And then an ocean of black removal and card draw. And I mean a veritable ocean. One of the key differences between the Gardens decks and the mid-range decks that we just talked about is honestly just the number of removal spells they run. An average mid-range deck will run somewhere between 4 to 8 removal spells. These guys will run closer to 12, and it'll feel like they're running 20. A lot of times because they literally have cards like Campfire, which will shuffle their graveyard back into their deck just so they can have more removal spells. Okay? These decks are so annoying. I hate playing against them. They're a wonderful thing. They draw cards, they kill your shit, and then eventually they kill you with something dumb like either an Avenging Hunter that you can't stop and it got the initiative and it gets out of hand, or even better with a recurring Cauldron Familiar. Yeah. And Pestilence. Yeah. What's that? Well, Cauldron Familiar is legal in Pauper. Cauldron Familiar. The cat. How do you recur it? You sacrifice food to it, such as Lembas, Nutrient Block, Heaped Harvest. You'll also notice what all of these cards have in common. Lembas enters the battlefield. Scry 1, draw a card. Nutrient Block. When you get sacrificed, draw a card. Heaped Harvest enters the battlefield, put a land onto the battlefield. Also, when it leaves the battlefield, when it gets sacrificed, you ramp yet again. Amazing with this. Yeah. Somehow I knew that when I would get here, you would be interested. By the way, I'm not telling you how to live your life. Far be it from me how to tell you to live your life. But here we go. Like I said, far be it from me to tell you how to live your life, but as ridiculous as this idea might sound, this top aided the last Paupergeddon. Okay? There are videos about it. There are many aficionados within the Israeli Pauper community who like this deck. It is the shit. Okay. So, that's the good guys of the control decks. Let's talk about the bad guys. Jeskai Ephemerate. I love to hate this deck. Jeskai Ephemerate is what every filthy control player that ever inhabited the world wants to do. That's what they want to do. They fundamentally live off of the combination of Archaeomancer plus Ephemerate, which is one hell of a drug. Okay? Slowly generating value. These decks don't have like a combo win, but eventually what they do tend to have is a lock, because they are designed to slowly outcard you, and eventually they just lock you out of the game by the fact that they have an Archaeomancer plus an Ephemerate loop. Remember, every Ephemerate essentially represents 2 cards within Archaeomancer, so they'll just keep on using one of the blinks to bring back the Ephemerate, and the second one to bring back a counter spell, so that they will counter every single spell that you cast. That's how they might eventually win. Occasionally, you draw off the top and you play a land, and at that point, instead of recurring the counter spell, they say, oh, actually, this turn I'll recur a bolt. Bolt you for 3. And slowly and inexorably and inevitably kill you. They really, really do. Hashtag no king shame. So, and I don't just say this because I lost this on Wednesday and I fucking hate playing against this. This is a great deck. It has a very, very high skill ceiling. And it also is a slow deck. We'll talk about that later. Finally, Azorius Familiars. My personal preference if you're going to go down the Archaeomancer Ephemerate route. Azorius Familiars shares a lot of its DNA with Jeskai. Oh, right, we had this conversation, right? You said which one to build, and I told you build this. Right? Yeah. So now I'll tell you why I build this, but I still stand by saying that you should build this. Azorius Familiars shares a lot of the same DNA with the Jeskai Ephemerate. The core of it is still essentially blinking Archaeomancer for value. However, one of the key differences is that Azorius Familiars is much more of a control combo deck rather than a pure control deck. Azorius Familiars looks to play out Sunscape Familiars to reduce the costs of blue spells, and eventually it usually gets to a point where it has 2 Sunscape Familiars on the board, an Archaeomancer, and it has a Ghostly Flicker in hand, and it will flicker the Archaeomancer and an island. And then it can do this an infinite number of times, which doesn't really do anything by itself, but when you have a Murmuring Mystic on the battlefield, it generates an infinite number of birds at instant speed, which you can then kill the opponent with next turn. When you have a God Pharaoh's Faithful on the battlefield, it generates an infinite number of life at instant speed. And a lot of card decks don't have a way of beating infinite life. And this deck is designed to never deck itself because it also has Mortuary Mire as one of its lands, so it can keep on restacking its deck. This, unlike this, is designed to get to a point. This is one of those decks that almost always ends up scoring relatively high in Paupergeddon. Grixis Affinity, Wildfire. There you go. 5th place in Paupergeddon, Azorius Familiars. Because, like I say, people aren't very good at playing against these decks. Because they don't show up a lot in MTGO. They're very click-intensive, and usually they go, I can demonstrate a loop. Do I win? And that's how they beat the clock, essentially. In paper, but not in MTGO. Oh, yes. Very important part of fog decks and lock decks, yes. Yeah. We'll talk about that later. Hold questions until later. Opa, da, 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 da. Combo decks. Okay. This is, if in the previous slide I demonstrated the fact that I'm less good at playing some of those archetypes, this is where I truly am out of my depth. I am not a very good combo player. There are people who are more qualified to talk about this than me, but it is important to recognize that these decks are a part of the format where in the past they weren't so much. Combo decks have made a strong resurgence in the Pauper metagame, and that's a good and healthy thing because it encourages control decks to come back as well and fight them. There are many types of combo decks in the format. Probably the most powerful and the most popular ones that you're going to hear are these three up here, starting with the Spy combo deck, aka Oops All Spells. This used to be a meme deck 6 years ago, and then cards got printed slowly more and more to the point that all of a sudden these players realized, hang on a second, I can really play 4 to 5 lands consistently and then spend the first 4 turns of the game removing those lands from my deck and playing them. And then on turn 4, I play a Balustrade Spy, mill my entire deck, and with Dread Return and Lotleth Giant, I bring it back from the graveyard and dome you for, 30, more or less. Very consistent, very good part of the metagame. You need to know how to play against this or play with this. Ruby Storm, a more recent addition to the metagame. It is, in many ways, the perverted mirror of the Azorius Familiars deck. If the Azorius Familiars is a control combo deck, this is, as befits red, the all-in version of combo. It will play a combination of Familiars and Anarchomancers to reduce the cost of the red sorceries and instants. Eventually, this will lead them to a turn where they sort of generate a huge amount of card draw and mana and sort of... I don't even remember how critical Seething Song is. They don't need that. They have other things. The key components, there's two cards that are really critical to the deck. One of them is Seize the Storm, downshifted in Innistrad Remastered, which makes elemental that has XX in terms of size, and X is the number of instants and sorceries in your graveyard and in exile that have flashback, very specific. And the other card that is quite critical to it and quite a lot of these combo decks is First Day of Class, which gives everything haste and a +1/+1 counter when it enters the battlefield on that turn. So, mark my words, this is probably the next card to get banned in Pauper, for the record. Every single problematic combo deck that has existed in Pauper in the last 3 years, with the exception of High Tide, had this card as the linchpin of its combo in one way. And this card is also what enables Pizza Combo, by the way. Yes? Not all of them, but the ones that want to win immediately do it all that. Yeah. A lot of times the learn mechanic in and of itself can even go to the sideboard to get you a protection spell, which is fucking amazing. Yeah. Hashtag thanks, Avatar. Yet one more wonderful thing that Universes Beyond has brought us. The more you know. Yep. Finally, Altertron. Tron has been a staple of the format for as long as the Tron lands have been legal. There are many various ways and many various things that are stupid that you can do with Tron because, guess what? Going 1/2/7 is dumb and broken. In the context of combo, these decks will do some sort of weird combination where they use the Urza lands to generate tons of mana, Ashnod's Altar and Mirror Retrievers to generate an infinite loop of generating mana and bringing something back from the graveyard, replaying it, and then usually doing this, they will trigger either Pact Doll Terror or Golem Foundry, or any number of other things that will allow them to either deal infinite damage at that point, or gain infinite life, generate infinite golems. They're going to do something stupid with it, is the bottom line. Okay? Ashnod's Altar is, in fact, a common that will kill you. Broadly speaking, these are some of the various combo decks that will kill you in this format. The key thing that I want to say about these is these are good, these are all in, they are powerful, but they are fragile. All of these decks require, at a bare minimum, 3 cards to combo, many of them more than 3 cards. Okay? Many of these rely on the graveyard in order to actually work. Many of these rely on some sort of creature in order to pull this off. This means that they will fold to disruption of some kind at some point in some way. None of these are unbeatable. Yes?
Why don't you if you combo like you found that's only like 2 cards and just discard your entire deck and then you can just draw 4 drums. I've got the name, but it just
What's
it's 2
two?
cards.
What 2 cards?
It's like it's a 1 card that says um there's 1 card that says whenever he gets a +1/+1 he like flickers himself or something like that, and then another whenever he gives a +1/+1 on his ability he answers himself or something like that.
Is it the one that comes in
Or
like
no
there's
no
something
wait no no
else
no no.
in the back of the deck?
We'll talk about this later. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, maybe. I think.
We'll get later. Okay, finally, later. We're almost done. Deck selection and conclusions. What's that?
One slide missing.
Is there a slide missing?
I waited for the elf.
Where's my elf slide?
One missing.
There's elves and more. Or
There
elves and
are
very.
no elves.
No,
The elves are
I had one.
No elves. Look.
Where did it go?
Talk about the elves.
I'm missing a slide.
It wasn't.
We did not talk about the elves.
No, hang on.
Table of content.
It was the
Control, combo, Makala.
We did not talk about the elves.
No.
We erased it from memory.
No, okay.
I blame Tal. Deny the elf.
So there is a slide missing from this iteration for some reason. I'll rebuild it later. They are the Hypermana decks, Elves et al. Okay? Hypermana decks, there are 3 decks that I wanted to talk about. Number 1, Elves. Number 2, Monstertron. And number 3, Gruul Stompy. Okay? Elves is the apex predator of the Hypermana decks. The philosophy of Elves has become much more refined as a deck these days. It is designed to kill you, much like the aggro decks, very, very quickly if you don't disturb it. Its idea is to ask the very specific question, what is the maximum value that I can extract from Winding Way and Lead the Stampede when I'm playing a deck that has basically 40 creatures, 8 draw spells, and 12 lands, and that's pretty much it. It has become incredibly consistent. As you can imagine, elves generate tons of mana, and the thing that made elves incredibly popular in the linchpin these days was Nyxborn Hydra, because a lot of times what Nyxborn Hydra does is essentially act as a green fireball. You generate a bajillion amounts of mana with your Priest of Titania and your Kiran Rangers and blah, 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 blah. And then you bestow an X equals 14 Nyxborn Hydra on a stupid Llanowar elves and swing for 15 and kill them out of nowhere. Okay? This is how elves has now started operating its primary aggressive strategy. There are other things that it can do, but that's the real scary-ass thing that it can do. And all of these pieces are all findable off of Lead the Stampede and Winding Way. So, yeah. That's Elves. Also, the number 1 winner of Paupergeddon in the last event was an Elves player. So, yep. Be aware of Elves. Be prepared for Elves. Otherwise, Elves will be prepared for you. Number 2. Not so much recent addition as much as a rebirth of a good old-fashioned classic, Monstertron. People who just said, you know what we can do with lots of colorless mana? Cast big colorless creatures and not have to worry about colors. Exactly. The Timmy Dream. And the Timmy Dream has become even more real thanks to horrifying things such as Maelstrom Colossus. 7/7 for 8 mana with Cascade. So pay 8 mana, cast this, Cascade into some other huge horrible thing, Kill them. Things that have helped the deck become a deck recently are 2 to 3 lynch pieces. One of them we already talked about, Maelstrom Colossus. 2 is Pinnacle Killship from Magic in Space, Edge of Eternities. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it is... Exactly. Star Trek 1.0. the Exactly. Tomato. Yeah, just like I told my shrink. I'm, what was it? I'm unstoppable. No, that's not what I said. I said unstable. Anyways, so Pinnacle Killship. It kills pretty much everything, and most of your ginormous monsters that you're casting crew it immediately and make it into, a 7/7 flyer, which will kill you pretty quickly. Yeah. Also, the other thing that has helped the deck quite a bit was in Brothers War, in addition to Pinnacle Killship, and Brothers War had the something golem, boulder blah 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 golem, when it enters the... Yeah. Well, you don't cast it for the prototype, you cast it for big size, and it gains you a whole bunch of life, because I think that's how it works. And honestly, when red is coming at you and pressuring you aggressively, and you say, well, I play this 6/6, which you can't really kill, and it also gains me 6 life, which basically undoes 2 turns worth of your... I've time-walked you for 2 turns. They kind of go, oh, because then you start attacking them with it, or crewing Pinnacle Kill ships, or whatnot, and they die. So that's kind of what gave Monstertron its nice little resurgence. Also, Wretched Griff is a great fucking card. 3/4 flyer for 7 mana, draw a card. Dude, any day of the week. Dominates the skies. Draws you cards. What else could you ask for? This deck also makes really good use of Haunted Fengraf, by the way, because everything you return from the graveyard will kill people. So yeah, that's Monstertron. And finally, a good old favorite of mine is Gruul Stompy. Gruul Stompy operates on the very simple principle that if you go turn 1 Arbor Elf, turn 2 Forest with Utopia Sprawl on it, and then you cast Writhing Chrysalis on turn 2, most opponents will groan, roll their eyes backwards, and really think about whether they want to continue playing this match. Those that do choose to continue playing this match will usually discover that turn 3 will bring either a boarding party with a cascaded second Chrysalis, or an annoyed Altasar, which should really be named Annoying Altasar, because it itself cascades, so even if you counter the fucker, it's still going to cascade into that second Chrysalis. And then it itself also has both Reach and Trample. So, yeah. Gruul Stompy. It's a thing. It works. It's a deck that does 2 things. Ramp and big monsters. Removal is for suckers. Yeah. I strongly recommend playing the deck. It works great. I 3-0'd with it. I 2-1'd with it. It's fine. Those are the Hyper Mana decks. Finally. Right. Finally. All the way down to where we were. There we go. Conclusion. The most important thing when you go to a large-scale Pauper tournament, and when I say large-scale, I mean anything that's going to last 5+ rounds, play a deck that you like. Fatigue is absolutely your enemy. Unlike Limited, playing 5 rounds means that there's 5 rounds of sideboarding. There's a lot of thinking. What goes in? What goes out? What does this matchup look like for me? Pick something that you enjoy for long competitive events. Otherwise, you will be miserable. Broad game plan. Don't just tune your deck for the local store, okay? I don't remember who it was that asked me recently. I think it might have been you who asked me, are people playing... No, somebody else. Somebody else asked me, are people... I asked him, what do you want in your sideboard? He's borrowing a deck from me. And I told him... and he's told me, well, it depends. What are people playing? And I told him, it's a 32-player tournament. I don't know what everyone is playing. If it's 8 people, yeah, sure, I'll tell you what everyone's playing. 16, I can guess what 10 of them are playing. 32 and bigger, I'm sorry. You need to be prepared for a long, wide tournament. Prepare your sideboard accordingly. Don't just pick a niche brew deck that you know is designed to attack a specific metagame. Have a plan for all the metagame. At 32 players, it's all going to show up. Time management. Pick a deck that closes games quickly. Ties suck, and you also need time to go to the bathroom and eat. I didn't say this earlier, but if this is your first time going to a large tournament, I strongly discourage you from playing one of the control decks. Okay? If you're going to play a combo deck, play one that you have experience with and you know how to get through it quickly. Honestly, I could kind of say the same about mid-range decks. If you're going to play mid-range decks, you also need to know how to play them quickly. If you haven't played a mid-range deck, then I would recommend getting reps before you take it to the tournament. Yes. Pauper has a tendency of being grindier than other formats once you move past the aggro decks. Yeah. Time management, ties suck. Finally, get reps. Choose a deck that doesn't require huge mental load late in the day. If you find yourself taking tons of decisions late in the day, you are going to screw up. The only reason that I allow myself to take affinity decks sometimes to large tournaments is because I've played it so many times that I can pilot it with my eyes closed, frequently while snoring. It really disturbs the opponents. It's all about the psychological warfare. But yeah, if you ask me to pilot Jund at a large event or one of the Skyfisher decks, I'm not going to do it. I don't have the heuristics to handle that mental load for 5 rounds. 3 rounds, no problem. 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, can't do it. Not for those decks, not for me. And that's pretty much everything that I have. The last thing that I wanted to say is... Yes. Whoops. Huh? Okay. Useful resources. All of the things that I showed you... I do actually want to talk about these a little bit more. All the things that I showed you, Alex Ullman weekly reviews, the Pauper data, MTG Italia Facebook page, regular Pauper Facebook page, Reddit. Go to Reddit. Our Pauper on Reddit is great, and I'm perfectly fine with your worst nightmares. And as just to show you some examples of what I was talking about earlier, Spätzle results. Look at these guys. We, the Pauper Spätzle, are a Munich-based Pauper Discord group, 300 members, soon to be a registered association. Mazel tov. We post a Pauper Stammtisch, which is great. Blah 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 blah. Why am I showing you this? Ine. It was an awesome event with 60 players fighting for the bragging rights, etc., etc., etc. This is new. This is 3 days ago. This means that this league has been in existence not much longer, possibly even less than ours. Munich is obviously a bigger city than we are. Yeah.
I love it. Their cards are signed.
Oh, this is my favorite.
Can you have signed cards in your pocket?
Yeah, of course. These guys I'm calling attention to, they're having an IPT. I don't know how many of you know UK geography. Does anybody know where Bristol is? How do I say this politely? Bristol is like Bristol is the Netanya of the UK, okay? It's not like in the middle of nowhere, but it's kind of out of the way. It is a city that has some size, but mostly notoriety rather than anything else. And yet these guys have managed to get organized enough to create they've started showing up in my feed. They have a very well-organized Discord, a very well-organized page. They have a guest from the Polish League. This is a really well-known streamer. And they're having a 128-player event. Also, they have the cutest mascot and designed sleeves and playmats. Yeah, they're calling their thing Ursa's Saga, and it's all about bears. It's fucking adorable. Yeah.
Ursa's Saga.
Yeah. Look at it. Look at this altar. These are pretty great. Anyways, I'm showing you all of these mostly because these things have started popping up over the course of the last year. quite frankly. LPI went international 3 years ago. It took a year or two for it to start taking. This is the year where they're really starting to gain momentum. My dream is that next year we will join this. That's my dream. This tournament we're talking about a week from today is step one in seeing whether there is viability in our community for interest in this. We managed to get to 26, 30 players. Means that we can probably do it again. We do it again. All right. We got 2 of them under the belt. And a teacher-friendly day. Yeah, that'll be the Saturday one. If we manage to have 2 or 3 of these, it's enough track record that we can start talking to these people and start actually generating a proper league that generates buys for Paupergeddon, etc., etc., etc. And we'll start posting things like this. This is the plan, not for year 1, but yes, for year 2. We are now in month 10 of year 1. Yes. When are we having what? My likeness. Excellent question. All right. That's pretty much everything that I have for the lecture. I'm willing to stop recording. What do I need to do that?
What about a mascot?
We'll talk about that after I stop
I
recording.
think we'll go freeform now.
Thank you.
What about banning Turbo Farm?